Eila v'recha ve'eila v'asusim. V'anachnu b'shem Adonai Eloheinu nazkir. Heim ha'koru v'nafolu v'anachnu kamnu v'nasodod. V'nei Hashia HaMelech Yameinu v'yom kareinu. Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. So this mimer, up until this point, he was talking about what is the meaning of tefillah, of davening. And he explained that davening is compared to a ladder. And a ladder is something which connects that which is lower to something which is higher. And through the ladder, you're able to connect the upstairs and the downstairs. And of course, this can be explained in so many different ways. But the way he's explaining it in this mimer is that the upstairs is the etzem haneshama, the essence of the neshama that remains in Maila, and that's not part of the process of changing and becoming invested in a physical body, because it still maintains its same level of spirituality, which means that it experiences everything about godliness just like before, sees and hears and experiences and feels. The fact that the neshama came in the body does not affect that part of the neshama. That's what it means it remains l'mayla. And there's another part of the neshama that does go into the body, and that's the part of the neshama that does change. That part of the neshama no longer consciously feels godliness in an open way, and that's the part that we're conscious of. So this part is called the ha'aras and neshama that's lamata. And he explained that the ultimate goal is to make the connection between the two, and that connection is made mainly through davening. But in this parak, he goes into what is the point and what is the significance in the fact that the ladder was standing on the ground. And the Chumash also says, Lecha chomi artzacha, leave your land and go to the other land that I will show you. The emphasis on the land. And the ladder is standing on the land. So first he explained it the way it is in Spheres, that's referring to Spheres HaMalchus. And this Ois Gimel is explaining it in Avodah, what it means in terms of serving Hashem. That Oretz represents the midah of Anova, of humility. And the ladder must be standing on humility. In fact, any true connection to godliness can only happen with this prerequisite that there's humility. And if there's no humility, then it's not a true connection to godliness. In order to explain this, we'll back up a little bit to where he starts to speak about Amalek. So this in the middle of the page. We're talking about page 5. Maybe we should start from the top of the page and just flow a little bit easier. Inyan, top of the page. The foundation and the primary thing and the first thing, these all three terms that are used, but they all mean that the basis, the foundation, and also in a sense chronologically what comes first in Avodas Adam, she is karev lelikus, to enable him to become close to godliness. Hey mibchinas kirev umata l'maylo, whether it's becoming close in the first way, which is mamata l'maylo, from down up, or lales medarga ledarga ba'aba v'yira b'tfila, to rise from level to level, feeling fear of Hashem in davening, till he finally reaches this level of love and a desire for Hashem, which is above seichel. In other words, a level that he has to sort of be cautious not to have Klei HaNefesh because he's so overwhelmed with this love. That's one scenario. Or the reverse order, drawing down godliness from the Maila down here, and that's primarily through Torah. So whichever way it is, Hakel Huladei Anova V'Shiflas Dafka. It's all through Anova, through humility. Just need to mention that this doesn't mean Chas v'Shalom person can't serve Hashem without first getting rid of arrogance and having humility. Benegeya Maisa B'Peil, as far as action is concerned, every person could do, and every person is obligated to do, no matter what you're feeling. Which means actual, practical Torah mitzvahs we do, and we connect to Hashem. When he's talking about you can't really connect to godliness unless you have anava, he's referring to a higher level, a level where you feel consciously a connection to godliness. You feel an actual sensation of the heart of love for Hashem. You feel a sensation of awe of Hashem. You feel a sensation where you feel driven to do mitzvahs because of the godliness in the mitzvahs. That feeling of godliness, that can be developed unless a person has bittul. As it's written, the Eibusha says, Morim v'kodesh eshkein, I dwell high, high up. Bezdako shvol ruach, but I'm connected to those that are broken and have a humble spirit. In other words, even though he's all the way up there, but who does he connect to? Dafka, to those that are down here. Down here meaning to say those that are humble. But those people, a person who is yeshus v'gasus, he has yeshus, and gasus means, it's another way of saying arrogance. This person is not a vessel for godliness. Not only is not a vessel for godliness, which means he doesn't have something in him that would be able to, with that, contain godliness. He has something in him which actually rejects and doesn't allow godliness to dwell in him. In other words, it's not just that there's a lack, he's missing something. He actually has something which is fighting godliness, does the opposite. What is gasus? What is arrogance? Teves mokum la'atzmei, a person who, in his own eyes, occupies a big place in his own eyes. He considers himself with a lot of prominence. So we said last time that there's no real word in English for yeshus, no such word. It's a Hasidic term. But I guess the closest we can get to is a person whose sense of self is excessive. Focus on self is excessive. Whether you use the term self-centered or self-focused, but very strong sense of self. Everything he does, he's always thinking about me, whether it makes me this kind of person, it makes me that kind of person. What's the image that it gives me? So generally speaking, a person who's an arrogant person has a very high image of himself, thinks of himself as has a lot of prominence. It's this feeling, again, an excessive feeling. Everybody is aware of themselves, but not in an excessive way. He really considers himself very important. And this feeling, that he feels of himself as he's a very important person, this actually leads to all other negative character traits. Again, it's very hard to fully describe, but just to give some example, what's the difference between being aware of myself or excessive aware of myself? So the simplest way that I would try to describe it is that when a person is walking down the street on Kingston Avenue between Eastern Parkway and Union Street, are you aware that you're walking on Kingston Union Street? You're aware of yourself? Yeah. Let's change the scenario now. You are on stage. There are 5,000 people and you're going to perform. Are you also aware of yourself? Is it the same? Which means when I'm on stage, when I'm going to be singing or performing or whatever I'm going to be doing, I'm extremely aware of myself. Every movement that I make and every sound that I'm going to, how I'm going to present myself, what's going to be. The awareness that I have of self when I'm up on stage is a much greater awareness than when I'm just walking down the street. In fact, there's sometimes that I'm so busy doing something, I'm totally unaware of self. I'm totally unaware of self. The Gemara tells the story of one of the Rabbanim, one of the sages in Gemara, that he was learning Torah, and he was sitting in a way that he had his finger under his foot, and he was just learning and concentrating, but he didn't realize by doing that he was squeezing his finger so much, it started to bleed. And there was someone there, who I don't know if it was or someone who wasn't Jewish, or it was, I think it was someone who wasn't Jewish, and he said to him, you people are very hasty. And referring to that he said your mouth is quicker than your ears. In other words, you said Nasa v'nishma, like you're not thinking of what you're doing. Look what you just did to yourself, so to speak. Sometimes there are people that they're so into what they're doing, they don't even realize, they're so unaware of themselves because they're concentrating on whatever it is that they're doing. I'm sure you have this lahavdil with people that are very big thinkers, even in the secular world. But in the Torah world, there are a lot of stories of people that, there's a chassid that once said that he was walking down the street and he saw one of the older chassidim in the street. He was in a deep puddle of water. In the olden days, streets were not paved, not concrete. There was a lot of puddles. He was standing in the puddle up to his knees, and he was reading something from a mimer or something. Obviously, he was reading the mimer, and he was walking. He walked into the puddle, so his feet weren't moving anywhere because they got stuck. But he was so unaware that he was just standing in the middle of the street and reading.
But that's a level, number one.
What?
That's a level. It was like.
Yeah. I mean, if you can't really get to that level, you can start from just stopping in the middle of the street and reading things, bumping into poles,
You do it 3 times in the morning.
In other words, what does it mean? It means when you're really focused on things that have substance, you're not focused on yourself. When you focus on yourself, you're not so much focused on what you're doing and why you're doing and the importance of it's all about me. So a yesh is a person that sense of self, that awareness of self is very pronounced. That's the best way to put it. Yeah.
I got hit by a scooter when I was doing a Tommy or something.
Really?
Well, that can't be entirely my fault because the person on the scooter should have probably seen me.
But that means you were not aware of yourself.
No, I wasn't
You're
aware of
very, not very high level.
Oh,
Yeah, those things are dangerous. Yeah.
I think like, and I might be listening to pieces, but I feel like sometimes people themselves at a very high level, they don't realize they're focused on the Torah, and then their kids and their family, they like need to have more needs, and it's like, I don't read it, you don't read it, and they're immersed in like their high level, and like, I've seen that experience that, I don't know if it's connected, but
then maybe that's like a sense of self that like, they're not taking care of others, they're so involved in themselves.
yeah.
That it's not,
Well,
it's not about the others, it's about them.
right, but even if someone is, let's say, busy thinking about providing for their family, are they thinking about providing for the family, or it's about, am I a good provider? Am I not a good provider? Am I a success or am I a failure? It goes more back to the self. That's the awareness we're talking about. Yes, Hannah.
Well, I think you answered it, but I'll just ask anyways. Like it's not yes or it's not the same thing if you're focused on like others, but like also it's involved with self, like really extreme like people pleasers will be like so focused on like please like everybody, but they're very aware of themselves because they want to please everyone. with like what they're doing, you know? So is that also stems from Yeshus, or it's like a different extreme?
It's probably also connected to that. I mean, unfortunately, I remember I was reading somewhere where the person talks about people pleasers. And it's interesting to note that he couldn't think of any reason why you'd want to do a favor to another person except for being a people pleaser. Maybe you do it because that's the right thing to do. It didn't even dawn on this writer that people who likes to please others, it's only because they want to, it's because they're so into themselves. But the truth is, you want to please others, you want to make them happy. What's wrong with, why can't it just be you're a person who you like to help out?
Right.
Now, not every good midah has to be turned and twisted into some sort of psychological disorder, you know.
Right.
Was he MP or something? I don't know what. Yeah. Anyway, so let's get back here to so the word Yeshus and Gaiva. There are, just like everything else, there are many levels. What's how far arrogance goes. You know, we have the story with Rabbi Ben Nevat. Rabbi Ben Nevat was a melech appointed by Achia Shileni, and he was a king in those days that Hashem told Achia Shileni to appoint him as a king. It wasn't so simple. And he became the king over the 10 Shvatim, and he became the one that forced everybody to do Avodah Zarah and all that. Yet, it says that Hashem said to Achia Shiloni, I guess maybe through someone, but he said to him, Chazar bach, do tshuva. And if you do tshuva, I promise you that in the future, I, you, and David HaMelech, we will walk together in Gan Eden. Yeah. So he said to Hashem, but who's going to walk first, me or David HaMelech? So Hashem said, David HaMelech. If that's the case, no deal. And he didn't do tshuva. If there's any example of anyone brought down that he won't have any olam haba, not even tchis hamesim or anything, his name was Yerovam ben Nevat. He was the first king of the 10 tribes, the first one that through him the people were split. But anyway, we don't want to talk bad about him. Let him have a lichtige Gan Eden. But just bring out, the Gemara says it was arrogance that drove him off the path.
And then Hashem said that after he drove him to do Avodah Zarah.
Yeah.
So he could have done tshuva.
He said, do tshuva. If you do tshuva, I promise you such and such.
Wow.
I'm just saying there's gaiva like this, you know, the size of an elephant, and there's gaiva the size of a fly, but it's all yeshus. A pronounced awareness of self, to what degree? So what he's saying, that Gaiva and Yeshus, this is really the source for everything else that's negative. The Ksiv, it says, Reish is Goyim Amalek. The first of all the nations are Amalek. So when it says the first, it means chronologically first. They were the first ones to attack us. And that's why it says in the Chumash, Asher Karcha Baderech. Rashi gives the famous mushal that there's a hot bath. The water is so hot that it's literally bubbling from heat, and nobody is even going near that water because if you touch that water, you'll just be burned to pieces. And there's one person, a wild person, just jumps into the water. And Rashi says he jumps into the water, and immediately his whole body is covered with boils. But even though he got burnt, but he did succeed in cooling all of the water in the eyes of the people. In other words, the water wasn't made cold or by temperature, but in the minds of the people, psychologically, it's no longer what it was before. Before, these waters were untouchable, and now it's not. And that's what Amalek did with Bnei Yisrael. They came out of Mitzrayim, the whole world saw the miracles, so the feeling was these people are untouchable. And Amalek jumped into the water, he got beaten, he got killed, but he succeeded in cooling off. And that people, it's not untouchable. So he's called the first one. He broke the ice because he attacked. That already made it possible for others to attack. That was Begashmis. But Ruchnis, it means if the klipa of Amalek is there, then there's going to be the other klipas. In fact, this is the reason why he came to fight with the Yidden. Who was bothering him? They weren't going to conquer his country. Nobody was going in his direction. Nobody was out to get him. Why did he attack? The reason is he could not tolerate the greatness of Neshamas Yisrael. They saw how all the nations in the world were scared because of the greatness of the Yidden, of what happened. They were exalted by all the miracles. He couldn't stand it. Like the nature of an arrogant person, that someone else who is not bothering him, not hurting him, not getting in his way, but is having tremendous success, he can't tolerate it because of his yeshus. Not just the person that people inflate his greatness and they give him honor, but talking about somebody who's really, in essence, a person of very high caliber, in chokhmah, in good midas, and therefore he's in that very high place and people consider him very high esteem. Not only someone who inflates his own ego and he raises himself to a high standards that my mother can't stand. Someone really deserves to be that way because they are, in essence, very, very exceptional in their greatness, in their chokhmah and their midas. So why is it that he can't stand it? This is because of his yeshus. So what does it have to do with yeshus? And the answer is because anybody that is being honored, anybody that's being looked up upon, or anybody that's considered has a very big mila, certain qualities, automatically I'm not as big as I could be. I don't occupy all the space. There's someone else that's occupying space. The spotlight is shining on another person. So there's sort of less space, less importance, because there's another important person. And that, a person who's a Baal Gaiva, a person who's an arrogant person, that kills them. Even though, again, no one's touching him, no one's talking to them, but the mere fact that someone else, like, you're talking about a baby being born very often in a house. When the baby is born, the other kids, something happens to them. They get out of shape. Why? Because they get jealous. The mother's spending all the time with the baby. And I know mother said that she had a baby, came home, and the next day her other daughter said to her, take her back to the hospital. That's very blunt. Well, she didn't say because she's taking my space, but that's what it is.
My daughter took 3 months to say, okay, we can keep it.
After 3 months, okay. So it takes 3 months to, come to terms with it. But it's the same meaning. It's a hate that comes because of jealousy. And what's wrong with what is jealousy? Jealousy means if somebody is great, somehow it takes away from my greatness, because they're also great. So what's so special about me? There's another great person. But if there's nobody else out there that's great, then my greatness stands out more.
But Rabbi Majeski, our Nefesh Hamas is made that way.
What?
Our Nefesh Hamas is made that way.
Welcome to the club.
Right. So I'm saying, how, why? Why?
It's all part of the whole profile.
It's also in us.
It's
right?
a part of the whole profile. The taiva, gaiva, jealousy, all the negative characters is nefesh habahamis, and we're supposed to work on it. It's very hard for a person to get rid of it completely, but I could. In other words, if a person finds himself engaging in such thoughts, they stop themselves from thinking there. That's number one. And number two, like everything else, I'm able to control my sandibra. If I find that somebody's getting a lot of credit for something, everybody's talking about them, and there's something in me that's bothering me, I learn a mimer. Now I recognize what it is. It's not a stomach ache. What's bothering me is yeshus. And if yeshus is bothering me, then in other words, let's say you want to say something. What they did wasn't really so great. It sounds like just giving very pure objective judgment. But now I realize, no, that's coming from yeshus. And therefore I want to put it down a little bit. So that's something which I can control. Maybe I can't change everything deep down inside, but I can definitely change the way I talk about people or the way I act towards people. So if I know that it's yeshus, that where it's coming from, then I'll be acting in a different way, and that's what we can work on ourselves. Just yesterday, someone sent this picture. It was a very cute picture. It's two children. One of them is holding a stick and going like that to the other child and saying, I'm not bullying you. I'm just more skillful than you are. I know much better than you. That's all. In other words, without learning the mimer, I have all sorts of justifications why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I'm putting this person down, why I'm putting that person down or the other person down, because I'm smarter, I have more skill, I understand better. But when I realize what yeshus is, then I can realize that it's coming from the wrong place. And then I stop myself from doing the things that I would normally be doing. So this is the essence of a yesh that is arrogant. And this yeshus is not because he really has some great qualities, but of course there could be someone who is a yesh and has great qualities as well. But in essence, it's sibas gasus ruche v'snasusei. Chutzpah bilvad. It's just outright chutzpah, like he's going to give the mashal of a molik. Or not in this mimer, no. Another place it says, if you think about what Amalek did, everybody, all the nations of the world were sort of, Lashon is used, they melted with fear when they thought about Bnei Yisrael, because Egypt was, the superpower of those days. And look what happened to them. And here comes along Amalek, and it stands up against Hashem, against Bnei Yisrael. They just went through these hundreds of miracles, which are just like earth-shattering. That's only chutzpah, and the language of the Gemara, it's chutzpah v'leitaga. I think, I just remember now, we just spoke about this before Shabbos. There's a chutzpah that comes that's based on reason, that I have certain qualities. And because of my qualities, therefore I have chutzpah. So how much chutzpah will I have? As much as qualities that I have. So if I have a lot of money, I have a lot of chutzpah. I have more than a lot of money, I have more than a lot of chutzpah. If I have less money, I have less chutzpah, or any other quality. But if the chutzpah comes not mitzvah that, just mitzvah yeshus, then it's not even measured by anything. It's just totally out of any kind of measurement. And that's what happened with Amalek. A chutzpah beyond reason, to stand up against the Yidden and the Eibishter, that we just witnessed how a nation like Mitzrayim was just wiped out and humiliated, and the Eibishter sort of washed the floors with them, and they're going to attack. And now he explains that this is the reason why Klipas Amalek, who Reishis Goyim, is the first of all the nations, which means Reishis U'Mokil Zayin Umis. When we say Reishis Goyim, what are the Goyim? The Goyim are the 7 nations, Knani, Chiti, Ameri. And we know that the 7 nations are not only 7, they're really the source of all the nations, because the 7 nations represent the 7 midas. The Zayin Umar is the 7 nations, and Zayin midas rois. Zel Umazeh Osalakim. The Eibishter created the world in a way that Klippa corresponds to Kedusha. Yesh midas the Kedusha, just like in Kedusha there are midas. Chesed, Gevura, which is Avas Hashem, and Yiras Elokim. This is the Gevura, Chesed and Gevura. Chesed is love for Hashem, and Gevura is the feeling of fear and awe of Hashem. There's also Chesed and Gevura of the Umazeh, Chesed and Gevura of Klippa. What is Chesed and Gevura of Klippa? Chesed is also love, who inyan Avas Zoris, V'Tanugei Lamazeh. the love that's inappropriate and the pleasure that's inappropriate, all the worldly materialistic things, that's the love, that's the chesed of Klippa. Ugvurahu, and Gvura is also Gvura, but in a negative way. The word Gvura itself is not negative. Gvura could be in Kedusha. But Gvura in a negative way is kas, anger, ritzicha, person who has a nature to chas v'shalom, kill. What's his teferes in Klippa? Is his spoilers, his boasting. V'amalek, so basically all the 7 midas represent, all the 7 nations represent 7 midas, which means there's hundreds of different midas that are considered negative character traits, but they all fall under 7 classifications. And Amalek is the source of all of them. Amalek ureishes l'chol hazayim midas rois. As we actually see this in actual life. The mishu menusa, person who feels very highly of himself, hainu shemach shives atzmei. The mitzvah is davar, he gives himself prominence and importance. He's very prominent and important in his own eyes. Because of that feeling that he feels that he's so special, anything out there that one could like, anything that's good, anything that's sweet, anything that's pleasant, he wants it, and wants it very much. He will not rest, he will not calm down until he's able to fulfill his taiva. In other words, there's two kinds of bal taiva. Again, many categories, but generally 2 types. There's one person who has a taiva, he's overcome with a desire and attracted to something or to someone. And if I can get it, I can get it. If I can't, okay, we'll move on. And there's a certain bal taiva, no, if he wants something, he won't let up until he gets it. And that's what he's talking about. So what he's saying is there's a bal taiva that his taiva is very intense, very strong, and it's also in a way that I must have it. He will not accept defeat. It can't be that I won't get my taiva that I want.
That could also be for Kedusha, right?
What?
That could be also for Kedusha.
It could be for Kedusha, then it's a positive thing, of course. You know that famous story in Gemara that's brought down that there was a man that he saw this woman and he desired to be with this woman, and she was a woman that was married, and his desire was so strong that he became sick from the fact that he can't have what he wants. And his condition became worse, and finally the doctor said that if he doesn't get what he wants, he's going to die. So they came to Chachamim, to save someone's life, you do everything. And of course the Chachamim said, no way, there's nothing him to talk about. And what's the answer? But a person's life is in danger. The answer is it's his problem. He has to be able to be in control of his taivas. But this is an example of a taiva that if I don't get what I want, and that's why we find people sometimes with their desire for money or desire for other kind of taivas is so strong, they end up doing things that are absolutely insane. They end up doing things where they're risking their lives or risking their name or risking their parnasa. And later that's what happens, they lose it. And why did you do it in the first place? Because they just couldn't, they don't have it in them to contain themselves. If they want something, they have to have it. But a person who's not like that, Nishu b'shiflus, someone who's more of a humble person, Sheinei machshav esatzmei, he doesn't think so hardly of himself, he doesn't consider himself, he's a regular guy. La yirtze klal b'davar ha'tova oriv, he doesn't have that desire, I guess like this, and he gives an example, k'maya oni. Take, for example, a person who's very poor. He's not going to have a desire to have the kind of food and delicacies that kings eat. It's like out of his ballpark. It's out of his territory. His pashtus kazay, he doesn't even have a desire for these things. So because he doesn't think of himself as being somebody of this higher caliber, he doesn't have that kind of desire. So Kamei Kain, who has shuffle, person who is humble, he doesn't have this desire that everything he sees he has to have. And if he does desire it, very easily, he could discipline himself not to do it or not to have the thing that he wants. But this person who is very high in his own eyes, anything out there that's good, he wants it. It will not let go. There's another mimer where it talks about this in more detail, and it uses a term, I guess it would be equivalent to the English word entitlement. If I'm a very important person, then I feel I'm entitled to have this, and I deserve to have this. I deserve everything. And the more yesh the person is, the more he thinks everything out there he deserves. And that's one of the reasons why he can't let go. I mean, what do you mean I'm not going to get this? Me? I shouldn't get this. I have to get this. And he also, in that Maimon, explains why a person who's a yesh also is a person who ends up being depressed. You would think a yesh is a person, he's always thinking about himself, and he's always doing things for himself, and he thinks that he's so important. He should be the happiest person on the planet. But the truth is the opposite, a yesh. And the more yeshes a person has, the more depressed they're going to be. It's based on a pasuk. The mimer actually begins with this pasuk. The pasuk is the yisful anovim b'havaya simcha, that the people who are really happy are the humble people. And on the surface, you would think just the opposite. And the answer is because a person who's humble doesn't have this kind of feeling that I'm entitled to have this. If you feel that you were supposed to get something, and you don't get it, you're very upset. But if you don't feel that I'm entitled to this, then you don't get so upset. Yeah.
There's a balance between like being this person, kind of person who is like I deserve everything, and person who is like just believing himself and believing his goals. Because as soon as you stop believing in yourself, you lose in the fight. Like as soon as you have in the mind this thought that okay, it's not for me, you already lost. Like,
so we said before we started, and we'll have more time maybe tomorrow to go into it, that yeshus is not self-esteem. What you're talking about is a person who has no self-esteem, which means I don't deserve anything, and I'm nothing, and I'm not capable. That's not the taich yeshus. That's not the taich humility. This humility comes from something which is emes. And the emes is that I have Hashem with me, and He's behind me, and He gives me koyach to do everything, which means I can be very confident in what I need to do and what I need to accomplish, but it doesn't inflate my ego. I give the credit to Hashem. So it's not a lack of confidence in self. It's confidence in Hashem who's behind me, but not in the ego part of it. But this person, on the contrary, the person who has trust in Hashem and believes that's where it comes from, he has much more confidence than the person who is confident because they think they're very important. Again, if I think I'm very important, my confidence is measurable. If it's because of Hashem, it's immeasurable.
Also, the yeshus is like they become depressed because they don't have the self. They don't have what did you say? Like Hashem with them, right? Like the confidence is based on what they own or like the yeshus, and not necessarily that they have Hashem with themselves. So they can become depressed because as soon as they don't accomplish, they feel like nothing.
Right. Of course. So everything that's everything they don't accomplish. When they do accomplish, they still feel like nothing because I should have accomplished more.
Right.
And I should have gotten more recognition. I should have gotten this and I should have gotten that. So, and then he explains in the Mimer another point, we'll do that tomorrow, that even the things that I do have doesn't give him any true satisfaction. Because he feels, well, I'm entitled to this. Like he says, I'm just saying this briefly, tomorrow we'll learn more, that what does a person get more pleasure from? A gift or something that you work for and you get paid? A gift. I worked, I should get paid. That doesn't give you any special pleasure. A gift gives you pleasure. So a person who, whatever he has, begashmis or baruch, he feels, well, I deserve this. So even what he has doesn't give him real pleasure. Yeah. To be continued. Okay? That's Rabbi, everybody. Yes.
I heard this. Oh, you didn't listen?
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.